Definitely. Yes.
So myth number two is perfectionism, which I know you know a lot about, and you've done a lot of research and study about. And I find this with my clients a lot. So if you could maybe tell us a little bit, as a
Sure.
creative mentor, how perfectionism kind of comes up for your clients.
Absolutely. And I think perfectionism is something that you find in creative people a lot, like to some degree or another. And I think what's really interesting about perfectionism is that until fairly recently, it was thought to be something you were born with and then you were just stuck with. It was just a part of you. And more recent research has shown that the thinking about that has really changed. In fact, it's a mindset, which means that through like intentional working with it and like really changing the way you think, you can actually change that. So that's great news. Not stuck in that, which I think is really wonderful. And because it's like, oh God, it's so debilitating for an artist. It's like a spiral that you can get stuck in and never move forward from, symptoms, including like being highly critical of yourself and everything you do, and also of other people, just always unsatisfied, doubting yourself and second guessing, like self-sabotage in that way is really huge too.
And it really prevents you from getting your work out there. I know for my clients, when we're talking about social media or sending that newsletter, well, I don't have any shows, a gallery hasn't shown me in a while. I'm not going to send out a newsletter. Well, what are you doing? Give a behind the scenes view of your studio. There's a lot of things you can still communicate.
Another, I think, really big thing that perfectionism shows up as is procrastination, like not being able to finish things, not being able to move forward. There's sort of like all or nothing attitude where, even if you have a great success, there's still a part of you that says like, could have been better. And those are things that can just be so debilitating, as for a creative person, you know, because, we are generally just putting things out in the world a lot, anyway, ideally. And so
Yeah.
it can get triggered like constantly, and it can always be just torture for people and really keep them really not able to move forward.
Absolutely. And when I think of art, I think of it as like the ultimate act of vulnerability, whether that's music, whether that's painting. This is an internal thought that I had, that I expressed, and
Mm-hmm.
then ultimately shared with a bunch of people. That's really scary, right? So it's like you always
Absolutely.
are trying to, that perfectionism, you're trying to manage other people's expectations. Like, well,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to hate this, or they're going to not like this, you know, ethereal group out there, but rather reframing it of, this is a service. This is giving other people permission to be vulnerable. This is giving other people permission to see art and to do art. And I know a lot of people, just like regular people, when they see art, they're like, oh my God, like I could never do that. Like it inspires them. Well, maybe I could go, color at home or paint or sing in the shower or something. It's a service you're giving to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually, it's a way of thinking that we develop when we're young that we think will protect us from ever having to be vulnerable, right? And so, that we will never have to face that judgment or shame or be embarrassed, And you're absolutely right that, art really is the ultimate act of vulnerability, and so that it's a perfect storm, you
Yeah.
know. And so, yeah.
So how do you move on from perfectionism? I know you're a creative mentor and you work with
Mhm.
clients and kind of breaking through. And this is why the reason for the Artist Breakthrough series, right, is to get to the next level. And
Absolutely.
perfectionism is a major roadblock for a lot of clients. So how do you work
Mhm.
on perfectionism?
Well, it's really great to support people to have more self-compassion. And that's something which, to have someone reinforce that for you, even though it does have to come from inside, can be really, really valuable. Um, you know, when you acknowledge that, you're human and sometimes you will have success and other times less and probably somewhere in between, and like the thing that I love the most thinking about is that every little step you take, it doesn't have to be that grand idea that you wanted so badly, your name up in lights. Like, it can be a little thing. It can be sending out that email. It can be that social media post, but it's taking you a little bit closer to where you want to be. And also you're learning something in every single step that you take. And so that is a really big shift in the way of thinking about it, right? And that's something what it's really nice to have some support when you're making that shift because it's big, right? And it needs to be reinforced constantly. I find it very valuable, to have that like reflected.
I
Um,
think another thing that you can do, and this is just good advice for any problem, is just slow down and get
mm,
more into your body and get just like taking a couple of deep breaths, or if you meditate, when you're kind of in that analysis paralysis, or oh my God, what are people going to think about me, and that monkey mind and all that craziness, taking a deep breath and, like you said, just remembering, connecting with yourself. I'm human, it's okay. And being gentle with yourself. Another thing is to like really listen into what are these voices in your head. You're not crazy, to have different voices. And what is the tone of the voices in your head? Is it judgmental? Is it supportive? And who's kind of talking? Like, just because you have a thought does not mean it's you.
mhm,
So for me, I've kind of like nicknamed them, and one of my favorite ones that always comes out at 2 a.m. is the taskmaster, to remind me of every single thing I did not do today and how I'm a total failure. And it's always at like 2 a.m. when I'm like wide awake with insomnia, and I can't go to bed. I'm like, where were you at 2 p.m.? Like, to help me get that person, that taskmaster never comes out at a useful time. So just kind of learning to like, okay, who's talking,
mhm.
and like to like you said, reiterate a more gentle tone, a more gentle voice, which is really hard to do, to get into practice of that.
It can be, yeah, it is a huge shift, and it's also really helpful to realize that everyone is somewhere in this process, no one has this actually figured out. And
We're
it's
all
something
just making it up, and it's okay.
exactly, it's something we all deal with, like, over and over again, and, actually does require, like, daily, attention and mindfulness to it. It's very powerful.
Yeah, I think another tool. Oh, we got a little viewpoint of my dog making a little say hello everyone to Tom. He's always here to cheer me up. Another tool is, I know a lot of people do to-do lists, but I really like creating a list at the end of the day of everything you've actually done and accomplished. And sometimes those things are really small but really hard, especially if you're dealing with anxiety or depression. Like, hey, I took a shower today. I fed myself today. I had a balanced meal. I got up, I got into the studio. I created today. I painted, I called
Mhm,
my mom, or
mhm.
whatever it is. Just listings. A lot of times we only focus on the things we haven't done, and we don't stop to celebrate the things we actually have done.
Mhm. Oh, that actually reminds me, that's what I was thinking today, is, like, actually celebrating every little tiny win is a really huge way to combat the sort of inertia of perfectionism, and that's one that I still struggle with, like, you make a small sale, you do whatever it is, like, to
Everyone's got
actually
to start somewhere,
yes,
The
exactly.
small actionable steps.
That's the thing. It's that stepping stones, the little steps towards where you want to be, and like making sure that those things, that you really sort of integrate that this is happening, and this is moving me towards where I want to be. It's not just happening sort of randomly, and I think that's incredibly powerful. It feels great when you kind of get your head around that.